What is the stupidest thing you have seen an otherwise smart person do? Mine was the stupidest thing I have done. It was pretty embarrassing. I was leaving my flat and I was talking to a girl in my uni course. As I got to the door to exit the building, I noticed someone outside and was going to let them come inside before I left. After about 6 or 7 seconds of me just standing there, the girl asked me what was up and I told her that the person outside must have been having trouble getting inside. She then pointed out that it was my reflection. Look at the bright side. It was probably equally embarrassing for the other guy. Once I got a call from one of my college professors, one of the smartest and friendliest person I know. Prof, can you pick me up at this address? 30 miles from his place without public transport? Me. Sure. How did you end up there? Prof, I went to sell my car to this guy. LMAO. This is my favorite. I can totally see how this happened. My boss and I were chatting on the phone about some random work issue. He told me to call so and so for some reason. I told him I needed the number. He said, hold on. I gotta look up the number on my phone. Shuffle sounds. Crap, where's my phone? Dang. Swerved it. My phone must have fallen out of my pocket. Sonofa. Well, gonna have to call you back once I find it. I cracked up until he jokingly yelled, don't you tell anyone about this. Only heard about it, but it's fantastic. I joined Mensa for the card. When I went to Kinko's to laminate it, I didn't read the instructions on the wall, and the laminate melted to the machine. I had to get the Kinko's guide to open the machine for me, but by then the card was bubbling. When he scraped it out and saw what it was, he laughed. He laughed so hard. Thought there was 60 cents in a dollar. Took him a solid couple minutes to figure out that there wasn't after we just sat there laughing at him. Thought there was 60 seconds in a dollar. Took him a solid couple dollars to figure out that there wasn't. My wife, the smartest person I know, looked in the sky at about 3 PM and asked me why the sun was so dim. She was looking at the moon. Please tell me you leaned over and in a Scottish accent said, no donkey, that's the moon. Was at law school with a smart guy. We shared a house. He wouldn't heat anything up in the microwave if it hadn't been bought as a microwavable product. He was convinced that it would get pumped with radiation and he'd be eating radioactive food. If I was that dumb, I probably would have done it to become the Hulk. My grandfather is a chemical engineer that used to work for Dow, handling startup of some of their biggest plants. He went on to be an expert in industrial cleanup operations. He's a practical genius. He also decided it was perfectly acceptable to put stuffing into a plastic bowl and slide it into a 400-degree oven. I once put a pizza in the oven on the wooden plate I was going to use to serve it after, so I'm not going to judge him. We still ate the pizza, but I definitely had a strange taste. I once tried opening a thing of Pillsbury biscuits with a can opener a few years ago. My mother took my picture with it to use it against me in the future. I had a college professor insist that afternoon started at 11 AM, because that's when he had lunch. I have no idea how you could get that wrong. Afternoon starts afternoon. It's in the dang word. Fun thing about college faculty, they are generally very knowledgeable about one thing only, and actually pretty stupid about a lot of other things. That's what you get for spending 10 years devoted to the study of something, usually somewhat obscure, to the point where you are probably the world authority on it. One time, my friends and I were walking around downtown and we were passing through a parking lot. One of my friends noticed this and asked, "Is this a car dealership?" "No, this is a parking lot." So naturally he responded with, "But why are there cars here?" Took a few minutes of explaining for him to remember that cars do tend to be in parking lots. This one is so bad that reading it got me stupid. My boyfriend, we did those 90-second microwavable rice packets and I smelled something burning. I asked, how long did you put the rice in for? He said, 3 minutes. I told him it was only supposed to be 90 seconds. And he looked at me like I was stupid and told me, ugh yeah, that's 90 seconds. Then a few seconds later he turned bright red. Still make fun of him for it. If you makes him feel better, I did something similar. I put one in and forgot to make a tear in the top for a vent. At about 75 seconds in, I hear a pop. That sucked to clean up. Oh boy, I finally have a story for this one. One of my mom's best friends growing up has a brother who was absolutely brilliant. This is a guy who graduated top of his class, got a perfect score on the SAT, and went to and graduated from Harvard. Sometime into his adult life, he decided to go to the grocery store a few blocks away. Ordinarily he walks, but he decided to drive this one particular time. He went to the store, got his stuff, and proceeded to walk home. The next morning, he went to get into his car, only to discover that it was missing from his driveway, so he filed a police report. A few days went by, and he had to go to the grocery store again. He walked like he normally does, and found his car exactly where he left it a few days before. This is a Harvard graduate. I did this. First time driving to school alone. I rode the bus home. My doctor, resident at top university hospital, wife constantly misuses the words door and window interchangeably. It's a riot. Please close the door. Where are you going? The door? Oh crap. I meant the window. This is practically daily. Weirdest, most confusing issue anyone could ever have. Like confusing floor and ceiling, or cat and rabbit. A girl I knew in high school needed a piece of paper, so she turned on the computer and printed one out. She probably felt smart as heck doing it too. Working at IT support, woman with a PhD in virology calls up. Her keys keep sticking. Do the standard troubleshooting but couldn't fix it, so I went to her desk. What was the cause of the keys sticking? Well, Miss PhD was eating a whole pineapple over her keyboard. About 5 years ago, I got one of those motion activated air fresheners and put it on my dresser. It wasn't until I got up the next morning that I discovered it was lined up directly at eye level where I got out of bed. I effectively booby trapped my room against myself. Very confident I see. My sister-in-law is a molecular biologist. Her level of genius is astounding. She put herself through school via scholarships, but made pocket money working at Ponderosa. One day she was changing the oil in the fryer, set the old, hot grease tub on the floor and proceeded to step in it. She literally cooked her foot. It took several skin grafts, but mostly looks normal now. So whenever someone does something stupid in our family, we say they cooked their foot. Oh cringe. That is a seriously big deal. Professors with all kinds of degrees who've written renowned books papers can't figure out how to make a video play on the projector instead of the monitor. My father told me a story about his father. My grandfather was a brilliant chemical engineer working for Procter & Gamble. He actually led the team that figured out how to make liquid Tide. One day he came home, scooped himself some ice cream, put chocolate chips on top, and put it in the microwave. He was surprised that the ice cream melted rather than the chocolate. I stuck my hand in a pot of boiling water. My brain just stopped working for that second apparently. I took a frying pan out of the oven without a mitt. We should start our own cooking show. Friend is standing in line at Target and has a 9-volt battery and a penny in his pocket. The two make contact and naturally the penny gets hot. He pulls the 9-volt out of his pocket and looks at it as if he has never seen this object before. He sticks his tongue on it, shocks himself, pulls it away, looks at it, does it again, pulls it away, looks at it and does it a third time. The cashier just stared at him like someone let a monkey out of the zoo. A lot of smart people I know are just terrible with money. I know people with 4.0 GPAs and high-paying jobs that are borderline bankrupt because they spend every dollar they have trying to keep up with the high rollers who run their company. Like these are smart people, but incredibly insecure as well. And that's just a terrible combination. I made peanut butter cookies last night and I forgot to put in all of the dry ingredients. So, you made peanut butter soup. My best friend has a genius level IQ. He was in the top 10 of my graduating class and has nearly a 4.0 GPA studying chemical engineering. I once saw him look right down the barrel of a loaded shotgun. I did this with a champagne bottle I was trying to open. The cork popped, bounced off my forehead and then ricocheted off the ceiling. I had a round welt on my forehead for a day or two. I am not a genius. My old lady of 7 years just finished up her masters in accounting. She roasted a chicken yesterday and as the timer rang I yelled to her remember to use a hot pad to take the lid off the roaster pan, because like the pan the lid handle is hot. I get a sarcastic no duh back from her. I watch, from a mirror with a good angle of her, as she takes the pan out with 2 hot pads on the side handles of the pan. She then sets the pan on the stovetop, puts the hot pads back in the drawer, then grabs the handle on the lid of the pan. She burned her hand again, dropped the lid to the floor loudly, and then ran to the living room to see if I was laughing. I was. Dumbest smart person I know. I love her. I was going to bake cookies for my 20th year high school reunion, but I encountered a problem. I explained this problem to my fiance, me. I was going to make cookies for my reunion, but it ended up I couldn't. Him. Why? Me. Well, your mom gave me that box of cookie cutters that has over 100 cookie cutters, and I was going to make cookies in the 9 and 5 shape for the class of 1995, but it didn't come with the number 9. It has 1 through 8, but number 9. At this point he just stared at me, because he thought I had come to a realization on my own, which I didn't. Me. What? Him. You just have to turn the number 6 upside down and it's a 9. Me. Blank look. Him. The number 6 upside down is the number 9. You did realize that, didn't you? He cracked up when he figured out that I never realized this. I have a PhD. That's okay. My mom is a programmer for Boeing and she complained that her heated blanket was still too hot. Turns out that the number 7 looks like an L upside down and she thought it was on low. Well, she married me, but I forgive her. I have a relative, cousin of my aunt, what's that, who has a doctorate in engineer and made a ton of money in petroleum engineering, yet over the years has sent a large fraction of it to Nigerian scammers. Even more interestingly, he started doing this before the internet when they just sent snail mail letters to people, and has sent it to the same Nigerian family over the decades, his way to support Africa, I guess. But then this man also doesn't believe we landed on the moon or that the Holocaust happened, so there's that. A girl I went to high school with went to the same university as me. She was top 5 in our graduating class and hasn't gotten lower than a 3.8 in 2 years of college, including biochemistry and organic chemistry. One summer day we were out at a bonfire and she had a hood on because, and I quote, "Don't moon rays make you paler?" My grandfather has a PhD in computer science, one of the early ones. He was on the team that developed the fingerprint computer that ended the days of using a magnifying glass to match prints. The original computer now lives at the Smithsonian. It was snowing out and he said he was grilling steaks. I thought he was on the outside porch. I looked outside and he was not there. I found him in the basement using a huge gas grill. It took me several minutes to explain to him why this was not a good idea. My friend turned 21 day, and we were talking about his birthday. I proceeded to comment, "Wow, you've been a teenager for 20 years. Yeah, my friends don't let me live that one down." Told my sister, who was turning 25, that she was halfway to 30. Spend an incredible amount of time and effort nervously trying to figure out why an almost new and very expensive oscilloscope wouldn't turn on. Reason: someone had toggled the switch on one of the built-in power strips on the lab bench to off. I did this 2 years ago. The scale of the amplitude was set in a way that prevented us from seeing any output. Took us about a week to figure it out. We were getting ready for dinner one night and we're kind of in a rush to get it done. Whatever we were making, it required bread. Well, the only bread we had was frozen at the time, so we had to quickly defrost it. So my mother randomly yelled for my oldest brother, who happens to be the smartest out of all of us, to go get it from the freezer and bring it to the kitchen. He delivered the frozen bread to the kitchen and our mom had her hands full, so she told him take the bread tie off and put it in the microwave. So he takes the tie off and puts it in the microwave and set it to defrost. Not even 30 seconds later he starts saying, "Mom, the bread tie's on fire." Turns out my brother thought it meant bread tie and not the frozen loaf of bread. My friend Kevin went to Caltech, works for JPL. He's an actual rocket scientist, literally one of the smartest people I can think of. When we were in our early 20s, he had to take his brand new Honda Civic back to the dealership after 2 weeks of ownership because he filled it with diesel. Afterwards, I asked him, "Isn't the diesel nozzle incompatible with standard gas tanks?" His response: "It's not. It wasn't easy, but I made it work." My friend is a geneticist, smart guy all around. A few months ago he spent 10 minutes trying to push open the door in his kitchen and eventually his hand went through it and he gashed his arm and ended up getting a bunch of stitches. If he had pulled the door instead it would have opened. I travel a lot for work and am going to London later this month. One of my girlfriend's best friends is a NICU nurse, saving the lives of premature babies every day, and has forgotten more about biology and anatomy than I've ever known. She asked what language they speak in London and if I was going to visit the Eiffel Tower if I got some free time. This one is about me. I'm a senior in engineering being paid to do some fancy research that we hope will easily eradicate third world diseases. My dad has always managed my finances and never really taught me much. I just got a credit card and had a $500 limit. Spent $492 in a month and got confused when during the next calendar month after the statement, my credit card was still being declined. I thought the limit reset every month regardless of if you paid your balance. It just made sense to me. When I called my dad asking why my credit card hadn't reset yet, he laughed at me for a solid hour and told all his business partners. I laughed it off as being an engineer, not a finance person like him, but my lack of real world experience with economics money is also sad. I'm a living case of why we should have useful life skills classes in high school. When I called my dad asking why my credit card hadn't reset yet, he laughed at me for a solid hour and told all his business partners. Hahaha, look how little I taught my son. This girl I was kinda seeing at the time asked me if I wanted to watch a movie, so we go up to her room. She pops in Elf and turns to me and asks, wait, can you watch this since you're Jewish? She has a 4.0 GPA and is going to law school next year. Also, when I eventually told her I was a virgin, she asked me if I ever had a boner. I was 19. Not seen directly, but heard the professor tell these two stories. This man is an expert with nanomaterials and just an all-around physics champion. And yet, story 1, the professor begins watching karate movies and becomes a fan. Soon he begins to wonder if he can reproduce some of the feats he has seen various martial artists perform on film. I am a physicist, he says. I can do this. So he gets a stack of a few cinder blocks and tries to break them with his fist. He shattered almost every bone in that hand. Story 2. Once, his home's water heater stopped heating water. I am a physicist, he says. I can do this. After all, he reasons, the water heater is just a really big resistor submerged in a tank of water with some plumbing attached to it all. Why not repair it himself? The basement cleanup cost him a few $1,000s. Plus the cost of a new water heater and professional installation. What I am not a smart man moments have you experienced? Called LAPD because car window was stolen. Officer comes and rolls up the window. I forgot I rolled it down. Holy crap. Someone told me their birthday was on Friday the 13th this year. After acknowledging how much that would suck, I found a long list online of every upcoming Friday the 13th for the next several decades to check that it would never happen to me. I made it 50 years down the list before I thought I realized a slight pattern and that my birthday won't ever not be on the 18th. Interesting fact. Because of the day the Gregorian calendar started, the 13th falls on a Friday more often than any other day. Source. I got home one day and my dad had worked it out in Excel. We're a fun family. Once I wanted to test my voicemail, so I used my house phone to dial my cell, and when my phone rang I actually answered it expecting someone to be on the other line. Step 1. Obtain yogurt. Step 2. Remove lid. Step 3. Throw yogurt in the trash bin. Step 4. Look at your hand, holding the yogurt lid. Step 5. Evaluate all of your life choices. Step 6. Lick lid. I used a leaf blower on an anthill. Thought it'd be an easy way to get rid of it. Did not consider how terrifying flying ants are. I tried to do the same thing but with a shovel. I don't know how I forgot that they can climb. I once painted myself into a corner while painting the basement floor. Had to crawl out the basement window. There are still footprints down there to remind of my Goma moment. On multiple occasions, I have managed to successfully leave my keys in the lock in the car. I have no idea how my car has not been stolen yet. I've done it with the car running before. Went through a drive-through, ordered, paid, thanked them, and then bolted before they even had a chance to hand me my food. Didn't realize my abject stupidity until about 10 minutes later when I reached for a fry and got nothing but air. Manager at a Burger King here. Don't be ashamed. This happens far more often than you would think. I would say once or twice a week at least. You're not the only one. Vacuumed half of my room. Music in the ears. Music stops. Realize the vacuum cleaner isn't on. Vacuumer. You can add that to the list. Shaving myself in the shower. So I rinsed the razor blade. I looked down at it and there were still some hairs caught in the edges of the blade. So I figured I'm just gonna run my thumb through here to clean this off. Stupid. It was still stupid when I did it again several years later. The lovely image of your fingertip turning into nice, bloody gills. In Texas there are a lot of scorpions. So I put the ones that I find inside the house in an old Folgers coffee container. Around a week later I thought all the scorpions would be dead, so I dumped them on the countertop to see the corpses, and the 3 or 4 I found scurried like a mother off the countertop into the carpet, and I screamed like a little girl. I once threw my wallet onto a stranger's shed roof because I am an idiot. Walking down the street, playing catch with myself using wallet, getting cocky, going higher, trying to spin it, going higher, lands on shed, frick. This reminds me of the time my dad was at the beach and there were seagulls bothering him. He decided to throw his car keys at the seagull, which proceeded to pick them up and fly away. He chased the seagull until it eventually dropped them, but he says that he almost died when he saw his keys flying away. Talking on the phone while packing my bag for the day. Where the heck is my phone? I often lose my keys while I'm driving. For some reason I wanted to try to step on a rake, like they do in comedies or whatever. So I put just a little weight on the pointy things, just to see if it even moved, and bam, straight on my nose. It did hurt a lot. I did this too, for the exact same reason, to see if it actually happened like it does in movies. Dang, that hurt. I work in IT and had a ticket for a user whose email was broken that I was trying to get a hold of by emailing them for 3 days till my boss slowly talked me through the situation until it hit me. Opening the door to a room to stick my head in and talk to someone briefly before saying bye and closing the door on my own head. I've done this multiple times over the years and I'm still always surprised when the door goes clunk against my noggin. I never realized why it's always the last place you look until I was like 27. Explain. Pulled up to pump at gas station, went inside to pay cash, walked back out and drove off. No gas. I once accused a co-worker who didn't get along with me for stealing my sunglasses in front of half the staff. We all know where this is headed, and when I finished my rant, my sunglasses fell off of the top of my head into my hands. I quietly apologized with my shades on. Shades on equals good recovery. I dropped my straightener. Instead of jumping back so it doesn't burn my feet like I usually do, I grabbed the goddamn hot plate and held onto it till I put it back on the counter. I have no idea how my body didn't automatically let it go, but dang did I get burned afterwards. When you grab something really hot, the muscle spasms can keep your hand clenched momentarily. This is one reason we were taught in chemistry to always use the back of your hand to test if something was hot. If you got too close and accidentally touched it, you wouldn't grab and cause massive damage. I bet looking at pee will divert the blood away from the debilitating pressure this headache is causing. And now I've got 2 problems to deal with. I don't immediately see the flaw in this logic. Please explain. One time I was making Kool-Aid and I dumped the powder in the trash can and put the packet in the Kool-Aid container. There's something about the muscle memory involved with trash cans that causes the brain to just shut down. I have thrown away far too many spoons. I once kept pressing the same button on an elevator trying to get to the floor below, not realizing the button I was pressing was for the floor I was already at. I was wondering why the door kept opening. Needless to say, I felt like an idiot. On my last day of finals last semester, I was so dead tired that I walked all the way out to my car, about half a mile from campus, when I realized I forgot my expensive Ray-Ban sunglasses in the classroom. So, naturally, I walked all the way back to the classroom where people were still taking the exam when my professor asked me what I was looking for. I asked her if she had seen my sunglasses, to which she replied without a beat, "You mean the ones on your head?" I may not be a smart man, but I'm definitely not a smart woman either. One time I tried to pry apart 2 frozen hamburger patties with the patties in my right hand and the knife in my left pointed to my right hand. An hour later at the emergency room, the attending nurse had trouble believing I was a university student. I live in a region that doesn't get snow often, let alone more than a few inches when it finally does. Finally it snows here and it's so exciting, except that I still have to go to work. So when I got to my door I grabbed the handle and yanked trying to pry that dank thing open. I couldn't believe it. It was frozen shut. Finally, after almost falling down and busting my ass, I called my boss and said my car door is frozen shut. I'm just going to stay home today. The next day I had to leave for work again, and at this point majority of the snow was melted. I unlocked the door, got in and started the engine when it all of a sudden hit me. I never unlocked my door on the previous day. I did not feel like a smart woman. Was doing laundry one time and had half a load of whites left. Underneath the whites was a white blanket. I did the half load of whites and then did the white blanket. My girlfriend asked, why didn't I just do the white blanket with the rest of the whites? We got into a whole argument about it. Then when she gave me my alone time, I thought to myself, yep, she was right this whole time. I had one this morning. Went downstairs to eat the candy bar I bought last night and had legitimately forgot that I had eaten it the night before. I think I'll eat it now. They just renovated the Wendy's I frequent and I filled one hand with ketchup because I didn't line the spout up with the cup. I see you really thought ahead with this one. Put a bowl in my glove box where my registration was. Got pulled over by a cop. To clarify, I don't eat cereal in my car. I've had quite a few. In the garage, alone. When I was 16 I stapled my thumb to a wall stud with a pneumatic stapler. Not so bad other than the fact that I was on an 8-foot ladder and no one was home. I was up there for a good hour before I got my shoe off and managed to get a screwdriver with my toe so I could pry the staple out. A few years ago I was once again working in the garage. I was 28 or 29 at this point. I was getting a bunch of stuff organized so I could get some big projects going. I decided that my roommate's 36 feet tube style TV would work out better on top of the fridge than in the middle of the floor. I hoisted the beast, which weighed nearly as much as me, onto my shoulder and tried to set it on top. At 5 feet 9 inches, I was just a few inches too short to get it up there, so I set the TV down. I glanced around the garage and spotted a chair with no back that I use when working on my bike. I clearly recall thinking to myself that it was an awful idea as I set it in front of the fridge. I did it anyway. I hoisted the TV back up onto my shoulder and then stepped up onto the chair. I then leaned the TV onto the edge of the fridge. Success. Or not. As I pushed the TV, rather than it tilting up and sliding back onto the fridge, I started to tip over backwards. In the split second I had to think. I only thought to save the TV. I grabbed a hold of it in a bear hug as I went over. I landed ass first in a bucket of soaking paint brushes, which exploded upon impact. To my right was the workbench. To my left a 125-gallon aquarium on a stand. I was pinned between the two and under the TV. I laid there in my blood and paint thinner for a good half hour before regaining enough strength to shimmy out from under the TV. My roommate was inside the whole time. He helped clean me up, superglued all of my cuts back together and went out to survey the damage. He's 6 feet 2 inches. Put the TV right up there, no problem. I had so many opportunities to ask for help, but never did. Girlfriend, penny for your thoughts. Me, you're not going to wind up looking like your mother, are you? Trying to make chili yesterday night. I opened up the can and dumped the kidney beans into the waste bin instead of the drainer. I stared at it for way too long before my brain registered my goof. I had Texas chili yesterday night. Texan here. Good. Making these delicious, soft chocolate chip cookies in 8th grade foods and sewing. After they got out of the 375-degree oven I grabbed the burning tray, not having the patience to wait. Clenched onto it because I was in shock, then carted in front of the whole class all in a matter of 45 seconds. Had blisters on every finger. Had a date last week. Girl came over. I cooked. While we're eating and talking, conversation switches over to methods of opening wine bottles. I tell her about that trick where you put it in your shoe and bang the bottom against a wall, and I grab the bottle of red that was on the table to demonstrate. The bottle I had just opened 30 seconds earlier. I was washing dishes and had an itch in my ear. Gave myself a cosmic wet willy. Ugh, a soapy willy. I'm a girl, but recently it was like 9 AM and I just arrived in work. That day I wore skin colored vest top with a jumper. Well, I'll lift my jumper and give it a little waft when I get too hot. While doing so I had the shock of my life and shouted, "Are my belly buttons gone?" Nope, belly button was very much still there, just the vest top confused me. Still get laughed at for it now. I was at a souvenir shop last year and there was a bowl full of candy. Candy coated chocolate designed to look like pebbles. Near the register, there was a little spoon in the bowl for people to scoop up some candy, place it in their hand and then eat it. In my absent-mindedness I eliminated the middleman and just put the whole spoon in my mouth. I was 26 years old. I'll never forget the look of utter disbelief on the cashier's face as I realized what I had done. When I was young, I wanted to grow up to be a fire truck. I was always told I could be anything I wanted when I grow up. I always said I wanted to be a dog. The pond near parents' house was frozen. Stupid me, having never seen ice before. Just moved over from Vietnam at the time. Decided to walk on it to see if it was really frozen. That was a cold, embarrassing day. Made a pressure bomb with water and dry ice in physics lab one time. It was balanced on a stool on the middle of the room. We were all terrified when it pressurized and didn't explode. Tried knocking it off the stool. Still didn't go off. I went over and picked it up. Must have been adrenaline preventing me from thinking clearly, because someone handed me a knife and said that I should make a little hole and use the pressure to spray the water at high speeds. Result: no crap. The thing exploded in my hands. Couldn't hear anything for about 15 seconds, and my whole chest was a tad bruised, but turned out fine. Immediately had that moment of, well, that was really stupid, dumbest thing I've ever done, and I did it with some of the smartest people I know cheering me on. Not sure if somehow nobody realized what was gonna happen, or if they just wanted to see me do it. I poured pancake batter into a toaster 2 days in a row. My mom and I needed to take my car to a shop to get it fixed. Our plan was we would drive separately there, and then we would drive back together in the same car. Typical situation, right? Well, we got about halfway to the shop when we realized we were in the same car already and forgot to actually drive my car to the shop as well. I ate fish food. I don't know why I thought it would ever be a good idea, but the second it hit my town vomit, I literally had to dash to the toilet and projectile vomit, because I decided to eat fish food. My brother bet me that I couldn't set off the trigger on a rat trap without getting caught in it. Think of a bear trap, but smaller and without teeth. I did not win. I was sipping some tea, holding it in my hand, and the condensation of the glass made my hand wet. I thought I want to dry that off and attempted to get a napkin with that same hand. So I dropped my tea and it clattered to the table. I think I need to step out of the gene pool. What have you witnessed someone do that made you realize she is really smart? My wife's grandfather. He's a retired electrical engineer with a dozen patents to his name, and a long list of recognitions I can't be bothered to remember or name. I always knew he was brilliant, but never realized just how, until one day last year we were visiting and he got a phone call. Keep in mind he's been retired for 20 years and is 86 years old. The phone call was from an electrical engineering firm from halfway across the globe asking if they could fly him out to a site and have him consult on the energy capture of a hydroelectric dam they were building. They'd run into a problem that none of them, all electrical engineers, could solve. They had consulted 3 of the top related university departments in the US on the issue, and the last one had referred them to him. 20 minutes on the phone, and he agreed to think about it. 2 days later he had solved their issue and written the solution on a single 8x11 sheet of paper, which he scanned and emailed to the company. He said he took so long to write it up because he didn't want to have to fly all the way there at his age. His explanation was so clear I was able to understand and follow it with no relevant higher education. One time my drunk uncle was in jail and needed bail money, and being that my dad was the only one in the family with any real savings, they all looked to him to fork up 100% the cash. Having been asked, he realized this situation had two possible outcomes. 1. Pay for his bail and never get the money back. 2. Not pay for the bail and the whole family blame him for it. So, my dad decided to throw them a curveball. He told them that whatever the rest of the family raised for the bail, he'll not only match it, he'll offer double whatever they raised together. Nobody offered 1 cent. Blame averted. Poor drunkle. I had a teacher in high school that using both hands could write a sentence starting from the beginning and end simultaneously. He even split the middle word of the sentence. He also spoke around 5 languages. What the frick? I was playing the card game Egyptian Rat Screw with some friends, and then all of us noticed that one of our friends was slapping a bit too fast to be believed. It turns out he was counting all of our cards and had each of our decks memorized, which is just insane. Till it's not Egyptian Rat Screw. Older brother always was terrible at school. I can remember him straight up asking why he needed to graduate high school and then again in college. He then accepted a low-level job after graduation in marketing that ultimately fell apart due to the company executives screwing up big time. During all of it, he somehow was able to keep a small client, and within 7 months of working was promoted to their executive marketing director, making 6 figures. Now he has multiple clients on the side and is always scheming something up. Dude is as hard-headed as they come, but nonetheless a dang marketing genius. Blows my mind how far he has come. I was once in Chinatown and I saw this old Chinese guy with a bunch of groceries. He had tied the bags together by the handle and slung them over his shoulder. He looked ridiculous. The next week I was struggling with a lot of groceries and I remembered the old Chinese guy. Stopped on the sidewalk, tied all my bags together, and walked home like the unencumbered dork I became that day. Not a person, but my parents' old dog. My mom would get bones from the butcher shop for their dog. They were long enough that the dog couldn't get all the marrow out of the center. The dog figured out that only my stepdad's truck was heavy enough to break them after experimenting with the other vehicles at the house. There was usually a bone in the same spot on the driveway every time I went home. Reminds me of crows dropping nuts on crosswalks. In high school I had a friend who we made fun of all the time for being dumb, but he would have the wackiest ideas that would somehow work. One time, around Christmas of my sophomore year, a few of us decided to buy a 30-pack, and then later decided we didn't feel like drinking it that night. I couldn't keep it at my house, but one of my friend's parents was coming to pick all my buddies up. Nobody knew how they were going to get the 30 out of my house into one of their houses. Then my friend came up with a genius idea. He went upstairs in my house and wrapped the 30 in wrapping paper. He then proceeded to carry it right out to the car with our friend's mom waiting and say it was a gift for his girlfriend who he was going to be seeing later that night. I realized that not being great at school doesn't mean someone isn't. Ingenious. I knew 2 guys in undergraduate who would play mental chess. As they'd passed in the hall, one guy would say knight to queen 3 or whatever. The other guy would roll back his eyes for a second and then nod to acknowledge the move. Both guys then kept walking in opposite directions. Later that day, when they passed again, the second guy would declare his counter move. A game could last days and they never forgot where any of the pieces were. Each had a mental image of the board. Sure, they might have been faking, but these guys were always first and second on the dean's honor list. For all 4 years of my undergraduate, I knew them pretty well. I think the mental chess was legit. Most really good players can do this. Once someone becomes familiar enough with the game, it becomes a lot easier to recognize patterns. Of course, intelligence is required, advantageous to get good at chess. Sitting in a best friend's apartment on the East Coast in the mid-1980s. He's working on some code on a prototype Unix workstation MIPS had given him. He runs his program, and it produces an answer, then runs it again and produces a different answer. Thinks about it for a minute and pronounces the CPU is broken. Right, the CPU is broken. Never heard that one before. Has it occurred to you that? Yes, it had occurred to him. Went through 3 or 4 scenarios. Then he pulled out the machine level debugger and started stepping through the code. Look, right here. The flags weren't updated right in this instruction. Yeah, whatever. Sends email on the brand new internet to MIPS. Gets a response the next day. Oh, you have that CPU. We have verified your issue. We will put a replacement in the mail promptly. His CPU was broken. 30 minutes from diagnosis to request to repair. Anybody who can explain highly complex things very simply. It takes an intelligent person to understand it, but it takes a brilliant person to grasp it so fully they can dumb it down to explain it to anybody. I think it was Feynman who tried to write an introductory textbook on some obscure topic and concluded that more research was needed, because he was unable to explain the topic simply enough. I was at my desk waiting to make a purchase over the phone, and I mentioned to a co-worker that I always have to pull my credit card out. I should have this number memorized by now. Another co-worker overheard that and said, "I know your Visa number," and spit it right out. After I got off the phone I asked him WTF, and he said he heard me say it a couple weeks earlier. The numbers just stick with him that way. I already knew he was a bright guy, but that took it up a notch. I'd ask him very politely to not ruin your life. When you sit down in a meeting for work where you're trying to solve a big problem and someone can say, "That's the wrong question," you need to be asking. People who can do that generally understand the bigger picture and all of the various variables and factors in play and how everything fits together. It's some next level action to watch the entire room go, "Wow, we're looking at trees and that guy's looking at the forest." My responses are limited. You must ask the right question. Lazy people are the best at this. I witnessed a kindergartner who couldn't draw straight lines, keep his pencil still and drag the paper around to draw a triangle. You'll never be as lazy as the person who named the fireplace. A kid in 2nd grade already knew algebra. Everyone knew he was smart. For April Fool's Day that year, our teacher decided to be cute and give us a pop quiz, so she went to the 8th grade class and asked for an algebra test, made copies and handed them out to us. Some of the kids were freaking out and the teacher assured us that we already went over this. So, she left the room and some of the kids started crying. She came back in after a few minutes and said that it was just a joke, but she graded the tests anyways. The smart kid scored an 18/20. My stepfather used to teach me math that was several years beyond what I was learning in 2nd grade. I'm an information sponge and he fed me brain anything that I asked for. One day my parents got a call from my teacher. The teacher told them that I was teaching my classmates 4th-5th grade math in my spare time at school and to make me knock it off. I never saw it myself because I was about 2 years old, but when my older sister was around 4 years old she used to go grocery shopping with my mom. My sister, would keep a running tally for all the items in my mom's cart. As my mom took something off the shelf my sister would ask the price and then would add it to the total in her head. If my mom put something back she would subtract it. My sister was right every time when they got to checkout. She's a doctor now. My sister also used to read the bedtime stories to my parents when she was around 2 years old. Goddamn genius. Meanwhile I'm the kid who ate Play-Doh. My dad had a business trip in Seattle that I tagged along on so I could see a soccer match and explore the city. He invited me to go to the research hospital with him one day and I agreed. They were working on testing some type of cardiovascular tool on a cadaver that they would stimulate blood flow into test. Seeing my dad, who didn't go to college, barely graduated from high school, lived on welfare with a single mom, and who knocked up a teenage girl when he was a teenager himself, perform surgery on a cadaver using a tool he invented that could potentially save thousands of lives blew my mind. He had hundreds of patents on devices. I got surgery 3 years ago and my shoulder surgeon used a tool he invented in the 90s. He's an incredibly smart and hard-working man who got just the right amount of luck to get him where he is today. I like it when you meet someone whose English is imperfect, but you realize they are very intelligent and are able to explain their thoughts. I remember once meeting a Japanese archaeologist who wasn't the best English speaker, but when he explained his research to me it was absolutely fascinating. Go to plug my dad in here. Had some friends over and just to mess around we asked him the definition of random words in the dictionary. We opened it to the eyes and asked the definition of 10-12 letter, 3-4 syllable words. Not only did he nail all of them but most definitions were verbatim. When we got to the 10th word, he goes, the verb or the noun, and we lost our crap. It was seriously ridiculous. We were freshmen in high school and could hardly pronounce the words we picked. Turns out he read the whole dictionary over the summer when he was 16 and bored. Guy is still the smartest person I've ever met. I'm not even a dad, but if I found out my son said this about me, I'd probably cry. My older brother has really bad ADD and always did terrible in school. I never realized how smart he was until a few years ago. We were watching Jeopardy together and he knew most of the answers to the most obscure crap. I was blown away. I swear it was like the scene from Groundhog Day. When my dad just decided to add an addition to the house. Like he'd be out there 70-80 hours a week adding 3 extra floors to the house with running water up to the 3rd floor. He would rent excavators and large moving equipment and only like 3 or 4 times he would hire an extra hand. That was amazing. Lots of dads decide to do that. But it sounds like yours actually completed it, which is absolutely amazing. Wife is smart, like 6 languages fluently, smart without breaking a sweat, has never not done well in school, always gets promoted etc etc. But no one in my family saw this because she's an introvert and tries to keep herself dumb so people get her and like her. My family and I are smart. She's next level up. So, after we got engaged, family had get together, as in cousins, friends, lots of people. As usual, we played some group games. She was reluctant, but I pulled her aside and asked her to try and fit in. She obliged, but was annoyed with me. Started with Pictionary. She schooled the room. Moved to a bunch of card games with a single deck. Counted cards. Knew everyone's decks etc. Quiz board game. Knew all the answers. Over and over again. She was dominant to the point of silencing my family. It was unnerving even for me. A few weeks later when we visited her family, we don't play games with soon-to-be Mrs. Frogtoosh. She plays to decimate the competition. Oh. Found out my little brother, age 12, has a legit photographic memory. He's a big LOTR fan and knows an abnormal amount about the series. Whenever he answers questions about it, he looks up and squints a bit. I asked him about it and it turns out that he is actually reading from the book in his head. He can even jump to random page numbers. He also knows a ridiculous amount of world history. I go to him when I need help with that. Sadly, he is adopted and we don't share the same genes. I'd like to be friends with your little brother. I'd take him to parties with me just for the lot of trivia so I don't have to pull out the complete guide to Middle Earth. Just kidding. I don't get invited to parties. Put hardly any time into studying and do better on an exam than me after I spend days studying. For those of you who are like this and didn't develop any study habits, I was in the same boat. I didn't have to study all through high school, but once I got to college it bit me in the butt. Here's probably my favorite study tactic that got me out of that rut. You ever had a test where professors will let you bring one 8x11 sheet or even an article with anything you want to put on it, formulas, etc? Well, I found that even if I didn't study anything else, just taking the time to fill one of these out was very useful. Realistically, you will use about 5-10% of what's on the sheet during the test, but filling it out will make you navigate through your notes and or class material and make you really think about what's important to be there due to the limited space. While doing this, you are subconsciously learning the material. So, even if it's an open book or closed notes test, it is always useful to do something like this, or at least it was for me. I was a kid, but I wish I wasn't. By the time I got to university I had no idea how to properly study and my grades took a huge hit and never really recovered. Growing up your dad is always that nut, at least mine was. Always thought of him as a joker who liked to invent stuff around the house. Long story short, when I was around 12, he made a basic hydrogen engine. He was on track to making it practical for his van and was so stoked, claiming he would get up to 4-5 more miles to the gallon. He was able to make a small hydrogen cell and a housing for it and set it in his van. It was so complicated I can't even explain it properly. He got 3-4 more miles to the gallon, so his prediction was pretty close. He was then stuck on how to get more out of it, make it cheaper, and maybe pitch his idea to get it on the markets. One day he was googling new ideas and came across an Aus uni that basically did the same thing before him. IDK the details, but it crushed him. He stopped working on it. Kinda stopped making stuff. A few years ago I was home visiting and was walking through his workshop and found the cell tucked away all dusty. It dawned on me then that I will never come close to being as smart and intuitive as my father. I told him before I left too. My old man cried. I cried. It was great. One of my best friends from high school was like a real life Good Will Hunting story. We came from a small, blue collar town. His parents were relatively poor. He was pretty much unheard of and unpopular, but not nerdy or geeky, more so hung out with the druggies and rock band types. Until he got to high school, he started becoming fascinated with math and physics. He would spend hours at the library just reading books upon books on the topics. Apparently he scored perfect or close to it on his AP exams in calculus and physics. As a sophomore in high school, our physics teacher at the school immediately took him under his wing. And before his sophomore year was over, he was teaching college math classes. He went on to get his doctorate from an Ivy League school and of course is a professor now. But he is definitely the smartest person I know. We used to sit at coffee shops in high school and he would just start doodling long, complex math problems on his napkin. It was way beyond anything I could understand, and I had taken all the same AP type classes he did. Holy crap. I've always wondered how people just get good at that stuff. It's like they have a giant vault only for that. Kid I knew in high school bet his friends, who were in the class, that he could get a 5, top score, on the AP chemistry test even though he didn't take the class. He did. Someone who doesn't engage with overdramatic, argumentative people. How's the saying go? An idiot will bring you down to their level and win. Smart people just avoid it and know how and when to keep their mouth closed. Lawyer arguing in front of the Supreme Court. He cites something in a law book, stating it can be found on page 84, and one of the justices motions to a clerk to get the book. The justice receives the book and tells the lawyer that no such thing is found on page 84. The lawyer responds, perhaps your honor's edition is incorrectly paginated. It was. My dad's friend Mitch. I've only met him a few times, but when I saw him a few months ago at my parents' anniversary party he remembered my birthday. I thought it was just weird until he pointed around the room and told me everyone else's birthday too. It was surreal. My younger brother unfortunately has severe ADHD and other mental disorders. He was kicked out of a couple of schools and has extreme social anxiety. He gets really annoying and argumentative. But dang, I have seen that boy observe something for a few minutes, be it a sport, a dance move, an equation, something tech related, an instrument, and execute to near perfection after maybe 3 tries. He sat down with my girlfriend to study algebra while he was in school and understood the whole chapter in few minutes. He just needed someone to motivate him. Use their native language in fun and original ways, like making conversations very colorful, fun adjectives, nice metaphors, etc. Teachers of Reddit, what is your "this student is so smart it's scary" story? I once had a pre-kindergartner who could read, and cried because he was so upset with how dumb the rest of the kids were. My mom would write little notes for preschool me and stick them in my lunchbox. My teacher noticed I could read them and would have me read them to the class every day after that. I cried, but from embarrassment lol. One of my kindergartners just knows multiplication, and not just the basic 5s or 10s. In the beginning when his parents told me I played along with 2 by 2 or 10x10, but you can tell him 17x14 and he knows it instantly. So cool to watch. I had a student ask for an extension on their paper because they were representing our nation in the World Science Festival. They came in 3rd, and the paper was an A+. Now I don't have an excuse to keep putting off my research revisions. I was doing a 500-piece puzzle with some kids. I was a preschool teacher. We finished the puzzle, except for one piece, which was nowhere to be found. Kid comes and takes one look at the puzzle on the table, says, "Oh, are you missing that? I know where it is." Reaches into another completely different 500-piece puzzle, rummages for like 10 seconds, pulls the piece out, fits it in. I ask him how he knew it was there. He said he had done the other puzzle for a bit and noticed it. I asked him how long ago. "Christmas," he says. It was February at the time. Kid was maybe 5 at the time. Might be more memory than intelligence. but that was crazy to see. Such a great kid, in somewhat dire circumstance. I hope he's gotten all the opportunities he deserved. 5-year-old memory is the best memory. I'm at the point where if I forget something in class, where I put my keys, what page we were on yesterday, what color James colored his duck, I just ask them. They always know. Had a first grader figure out exponents on his own. That's just the way he was raised. I work with 18-24-month-olds and we have an 18-month-old who can have little conversations, perfect sentence structures, perfect verb conjugation, perfect pronunciation, even L and R, knows all the alphabets, numbers, colors, shapes, by sight. Some of the others know some of those things, but I've never seen a baby this advanced. I sometimes forget she's only 1 year old because she seems more like 3.5, just tiny like a 1-year-old. Her dad brought her back from a well baby checkup telling us that the doctor asked does she say any words yet, and we all lolled cause she has full conversations. My son spoke in full sentences by 18 months, reading by 2.5, could add, subtract and multiply etc. before preschool. He's now 21, unemployed and spends all day playing games online, still smart as though, just lazy. We had a 4-year-old in preschool. He was sitting under the table writing down numbers for a long time. He had no time to talk to us. When he came out and we looked at what he had been doing, he said he wrote down all the multiplications. It turns out his brother in 5th grade was learning the multiplication table, and this little brother really wanted to do the same, but did not have a multiplication table. He counted on his fingers to add each column, and got the table right. A few days later he knew multiplication. He would also comment on dates. If someone told they had their birthday on the 12th of June, he would say that is in 184 days almost immediately. On an excursion we passed some statues with birth and death dates, and he would casually sum up. He was 78 years and 110 days old, she was born 33 years and 120 days before him, etc. I think he was maybe more focused and willing to understand than necessarily so smart. If he was right about the days, that's definitely very smart for a 4-year-old. I'm 26 and can't even do that. I taught high school math. One of my freshman students divided 1134 by 63 in his head in less than a second. I let him finish the problem, and then after he arrived at his answer, I asked him, how did you do that? He looked at me with this blank stare as if he was thinking, you can't do that. He proceeded to say, well, I doubled 63 and then multiplied that by 10, and then I saw that 1134 was just the difference of those two numbers. So 18 looked at me like it was nothing. I told him good work and moved on. I'm only above average at a few things, but one of them is mental math. When I saw that this kid could do this calculation that I couldn't, I was so happy. It was one of my happiest moments as a teacher. I didn't help him in that moment, but to know I played a small part in his math education felt so good. Well, I doubled 63 and then multiplied that by 10, and then I saw that 1134 was just the difference of those two numbers. So 18. I feel so stupid because I can't even wrap my head around the explanation. Not a teacher but a proud big brother. My baby sister was 5 when I came home from college for the summer after actually figuring out calculus, and I explained it to her, and she wrote it down in her journal. Yes, she kept one from the time she was about 4. Fast forward after she skipped a few grades in elementary school and she was taking calculus in high school, and could not understand why it was so easy, and reread her journal, figured it out, and called me, laughing. She has a PhD in high energy physics and does research at CERN. Yeah, that stuff. Desperately proud of her. You did her one of the best kindnesses you could have made happen. Early stimulation of the brain really can have a kid go places later. Not a teacher, but a kid in my grade ended up taking courses 2 years ahead of the rest of us advanced kids. The funny part was that he skipped his own mother's class and wrote novels during middle school math. He's published 3 books and currently has over 95% in every class. I'm a piano teacher on the side, teaching a 4-year-old how to read sheet music before she can read books. I ask her to find the season she will point then out on the page act. She can also do math really well and understands the concept of multiplication. Also another student that just started and plays by ear and composes her own pieces at 8. She also speaks 5 languages, which I didn't find out until I told her I was learning German. After teaching her for 3 months, she is already to the point where I had to send her to a better teacher. Kudos to you for recognizing that she needs a better teacher. Not many teachers do. Have an upvote. I have a 5-year-old this year who has stolen my wallet more times than I'd like to admit from my pocket without me knowing. I now wear a wallet chain like I don't remember what decade it is. He still tries, but he hasn't figured out a workaround yet. Nah man, he is even smarter than that. Now that he's trained you to be obsessed with the wallet, and you think that's all he cares about too, he's in the clear to start stealing other things. Check your desk. There was once a kid in the grade above me in middle school that hacked the school database and deleted everyone's grades. He was expelled. When I was in 6th grade, a kid took down the school internet using a school administered laptop. Kid took the fat highlighters, cut them open and removed the insides and replaced it with weed. Sold them at school. He was caught, but only because a kid snitched after they were caught getting high. Absolutely brilliant. Highlighters. It's right there in the name. My mom was a student teacher in the early 1970s. She recounts the story of a gifted first grader that nobody really knew how to handle. Every day her mentor would give the child a copy of the New York Times and let him read during her class. Much later, my mom was working as a speech therapist and had a severely autistic child that would come in daily. After their lessons, he would spend his free time drawing elaborate and accurate city maps on the whiteboard. It was fascinating. Worked at a special purpose preschool designed for kids on the autism spectrum. Did an intake day with a kiddo, 4YO, where I was just trying to have fun and see what kind of things he liked. Did some time on the computer where we surfed around YouTube a bit. He searched up a video about our solar system and began to explain to me the difference between the inner solar system and the outer solar system, what they're made of, sizes, electromagnetic fields to compensate for distance from the sun, etc. I had to Google everything he was saying because I had no idea if it was true. Spoiler alert, it was. My 7-year-old son is on the autism spectrum and this is him with weather and sports. I stopped questioning him because he was right and I wasn't. For Christmas we bought him a bunch of books on weather and climate. By New Year's he had memorized them all, yet we can't get him to sew his math homework. Not a teacher, but had a classmate who was, and still is, a genius. I distinctly remember him asking very complex questions on the current reading literature and making constructive arguments. It was over my head, but our teacher was offended and argued back that he didn't understand anything and or an overachiever. I think they were over her head as well. She screamed at him and stormed out of class a number of times. There was a time she asked him to leave as well. I never felt so bad for a classmate. He didn't deserve to be yelled at like that. I believe he's now a mathematician with published works and awards as well as a successful musician. My mother told me a story once of a kid she went to high school with. This kid was the local stoner but incredibly smart. He was talking college courses way before everyone else, saying they ran out of math for me dog. I have a student who is an immigrant that speaks fluent English. I assume that she grew up in the USA. She told me she had been here for a year and knew zero English before coming. I was amazed. I have another student who just does calculations instantly in his head. He doesn't have to think. When he learns more math, it just becomes automatic. He explained that numbers just make sense. The English thing is surprisingly easy as long as you take the right approach. I came to the US in the same situation as a 12-year-old. I just kept rewatching movies and series I had seen in my original language and was fluent 2 years later. I had a kid who could take one look at a national flag and then point to the corresponding country on an unlabeled world map instantly. Nah, I think that kid spent too many hours playing grand strategy games. I'm not a teacher, I'm a student, but one of my classmates just has so much random crap memorized. Ask him about anything, like the Crimean War, how to build a combustion engine, random useful bits of information about bands from the 70s, as well as being an excellent student in every single subject. He's also managed to teach himself Cyrillic or whatever that Russian alphabet thing is, and can speak Russian pretty well, despite never having taken a class of it in his life. IDK. It's just nuts he's so good at so many random things. I teach kids with autism that learn on the alternate curriculum, usually lower level academics, and have cognitive delays. I'm always amazed that while they might struggle in one area, the strengths they have. I had one girl who knew everyone's birthday, everyone she met, day, month, year and age. She could also do crazy math in her head. I have another kid who is minimally verbal but knows every locker combination in the school. Two others who are amazing artists. Another who could tell you what 80s movie icon shared a birthday with you. I love my kids. Former school aide here. I once had a very tiny lad surprise me. For typical development would be learning basic alphabet recognition and first sounds towards word forming. However, he took some play clay and made a and pan plan plane planets across the table and wandered off again. A kid's work kept deleting itself on a computer every few minutes. He was having a meltdown and I saw it happen. It was impossible to explain the phantom deleting that was going on. Fast forward to the end of the class and there's one kid remaining that was sitting at the opposite computer from the kid who lost all his work. He looks at me and says, "You wanna know how I did, sir?" He had put in a USB keyboard into the back of the computer and had it set up so he could hit the delete key with his big toe. It was the funniest stealth attack I'd seen in a long time. Being the teacher, I should have done something, but it was too funny and smart. My friend took the ACT when we were in 7th grade and got a 31. I don't know how, because they don't teach you half of that material until high school. Heck of a guy though, would intentionally get questions wrong on really difficult tests so he wouldn't kill the curve for the rest of us. Wish the smart dudes in my classes were like that. Had a classmate in my American government class in a community college about 9-10 years ago. Our teacher gives 3 questions for you to pick one of them to write about for the test in essay format. You get the question about a week or so to prepare you to study your subject's question. Most people write an average of 5-8 pages during the test. This guy writes around 20 pages, give or take. Even the teacher was dumbfounded. He did this for every test, and this is a 3-term class. You don't have to take all terms, or even take it order if you happen to do all 3. Yes, he got A's. He wanted to get into politics. I heard of overachievers, but WTF, who does that? Since I'm not a teacher either, my mom was a very average student, didn't try very hard, and was not planning to go to college. Back when she was in school, they used to administer IQ tests. A couple of months after she takes an IQ test, the school calls my grandparents and says, "We need to talk about your daughter." Everyone is like, "Oh Lord, what did she do now?" They both go to the school and the principal sits them down. "Your daughter has an IQ of 140, but she's failing algebra. We think you should send her to a psychiatrist." My grandfather was livid. He took off work for this. No, she never saw a psychiatrist, and she didn't go to college, but she's pretty smart. IQ doesn't exactly measure how smart you are, but your capacity to learn. I had a first grader with a speech impediment who was asking for a type of book. His peers and I couldn't understand him no matter how hard we tried. Finally, he gave up, and without any frustration, he found a picture book with someone stirring a pot on the cover. He opened the book and skimmed through words until he found what he was looking for, the word cooking. He showed me the book and pointed, telling me that was the word he had been trying to say. He wanted a cookbook. This was a 6-year-old. 6. Dang. Kids can be freaky when they memorize specific stuff, but that kind of thinking is incredibly intelligent. You have been visited by the healthy spirit of exercise. Boy, you will burn all calories today. If you comment, blessed be the heel found. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.